Welcome back to How to Be a Better DM, the official podcast of Monsters.rent. I'm Justin Lewis.
And I'm Tanner Weyland.
And we are here to help you tell better stories for yourself and your players as you dungeon master sessions of D&D, Dungeons & Dragons. We'd like to give you some quick announcements. We actually have one before the show, and then after the show, if you want to stick around, we have some more announcements then as well. But first, let's talk about this. Tired of being alone? Are you tired of not having any of your players understand you? Are you tired of never truly belonging? Well, you're in luck. All you need to do is join the Guild. The Guild is a unique and exclusive experience that is only open to Dungeon Masters. It is a full community focused on helping ease your DMing burdens. Want to meet other DMs? Join the Guild. Want to discuss your homebrew ideas with people who would appreciate it instead of just telling your cat? Join the Guild. Want to find a place where all your wildest dreams will come true? Join the Guild. Go to monsters.rent/guild and sign up today for free. Wait, that can't be right. Chuck, can you check this again? Is this supposed to be... What? Oh, they're serious? It's free? Oh, okay. All right. Yes, go to monsters.rent/guild and sign up today for free, even though they are crazy for giving this away for free. Common side effects may include burping, sneezing, laughing, breathing, hearing, listening, tasting, farting, critting, sarcasm, and in extreme cases, explosive diarrhea. Awesome. With that out of the way, we can get into today's show.
You are a DM, and one of your players, a friend, just had a close family member pass away. It has been incredibly hard on them, so you offer to cancel the session, but they requested that you still play. They say they need a break, and they're hoping that the session can be a way to take their mind off of everything. Now, you had originally planned on introducing the party to the next main villain. They had just finished the side dungeon, and you were thinking, hey, let's start on the next big leg of their adventure. However, you're also aware of your friend's feelings. Yes, they want a break, and spending any time with you would be a pleasure, I'm sure. However, you also want to go above and beyond. What would you like to do? Welcome back to How to Be a Better DM. I'm one of your hosts, Tanner Weyland, and together you and I will learn how to tell better stories as we DM sessions of Dungeons & Dragons 5e. You may have noticed, but no, I am not Justin. Surprise, surprise. When Justin first brought up the idea of doing this podcast together, originally we thought, hey, it'd be cool to have Caden join in on a few group discussions, obviously. And those have been great. But Justin also was like, hey, if you ever want to discuss a topic that you're passionate about, please feel free. And today's topic, I think, definitely plays into that. You'll notice at the start of the show that I kind of changed the intro. Just kind of more my style, but I'm fascinated by what-if scenarios, right? So the scenario that I presented, for example, was about a friend who'd gone through a hard thing. It didn't have to be that, a close friend or family member of theirs had passed or anything like that. But there's many times when your players are going through something and there's a desire to not only like forget about that. Maybe that's wrong. Maybe forgetting about it's not the right way to phrase it. But rather, there's always a desire when you get together as a D&D group to put aside, the troubles that are going on outside of your adventure. However, you shouldn't be completely unaware when it comes to preparing your sessions. In answer to my kind of query about like, hey, what do you do in a scenario like that where you want to make it special for a friend is having a hard time? Like, for example, my answer would be, hey, talk to the guy themselves, or talk to the person themselves, I guess I should say. Doesn't have to be a guy, but talking to them, finding out what they like about the campaign so far and what they kind of wish there was more of. You can even do it on the sly. You don't have to be like, hey, I know you're having the hardest time. Gee whiz, rough. Anyway, what do you like in the campaign? No, you don't have to frame it like that. you know how you can frame it? You can be like, hey, just wanted a little feedback. What are you enjoying so far? What do you want to see more of going forward? And then, since you know they're having a hard time, maybe you tweak that next campaign, or that next session, sorry. And instead of doing the big old uh, introductory thing that you had planned, or who knows what, right? Instead of doing that, maybe you're like, hey, let's have a fun little time. Let's do a side quest that I'm going to spring on them that I know they're going to have a real fun time with. Yeah, it doesn't, progress the story as much, but at least for this session, because my friend's in the thick of it, in their own life, uh, I'll change it, right? So that's something definitely to consider. Now, why am I bringing this up? So in the intro, at least in my intros, I am planning on doing more of these what if scenarios. And I'm not just saying that so that I can share, oh, hey, this is what I would do. This is, Tanner's big old idea session. No. Instead, I would love to hear your comments and how you would approach this situation, right? There are going to be different situations each week. And so for this week, I would love to hear, and you can share ideas on our Instagram. We actually set it up not too long ago. It's at How to Be a Better DM, and just go on there, comment on some of our posts or send us a direct message and let us know, hey, in that what if scenario that Tanner shared for episode 37, this is how I'd respond if I had a friend in that situation, and this is what I'd prepare, right? Another way that we would love to interact with you and to share some more of our thoughts is through a newsletter. In fact, we're writing monthly. All you need to do is sign up at the link that I'm going to have in the description of this episode. We'd love to get in contact with more of you. In fact, we even have a link in the newsletter where you can sign up and play a session of D&D, a one-shot with us. It depends on the month, who's going to be your DM. It could be Justin, could be me, could be Caden. Please reach out. We love to hear from you. And with no further ado, let's get into the topic of this podcast. As a little background for our topic today, I actually graduated with an English degree a couple years back. And like every English major, as I'm sure you know, I love books. I love reading them. I like writing them. But what does being an author have to do with being a better DM? Actually, they're about as linked as you could have it, right? When you're an author or a DM, your main focus is stories, right? You're trying to tell stories. The main difference, obviously, is the level of interaction. With an author, at least when you're just writing, you're just kind of on your own. Yes, as any actual published author will let you know, revisions, alpha readers, beta readers, those are so important for you. However, a lot of that comes, outside of the writing process. D&D is a little bit different, right? Especially when it comes to player feedback. Unlike writers who have to wait a bit, and they get their feedback all at once. As a DM, you're creating these stories at home, right? You're preparing these sessions. And then when you get there and you're like, hey, you go into the spooky forest, you find an abandoned chapel. Oh, you've got some ghosts in there. You get immediate feedback from your players about hey, how immersed do they feel? Do they feel interested in it, right? Because there's a chance that you set up that, let's say that spooky forest with a chapel in it kind of scenario, and they don't even take that hook, right? And they keep walking down the freaking road, just going, and they don't even care. That's a wonderful example of how being an author and being a DM is very different, but it's also one of the strengths. And so what I'm hoping to get across to you today is that if you're an author, especially if you're into fantasy, use your DMing time as a chance to polish your craft. Because if you're not, then you're missing out on valuable opportunity. Some of the upsides and some of the things that being a DM can definitely help you with as an author so that you can bring it into your own writing. First, I would say that it's just communal creativity gives you juice. I don't know how else to say it. Gives you enthusiasm is probably better, in a way that just you being by yourself can't necessarily, or at least it's harder to generate. For example, when you're coming up with stories and then you're talking with your players behind the scenes and saying like, hey, what do you have for your character and what do they plan? And also finding out like their goals for their character and then weaving it into your story. It's almost like a gift you're giving them, right? You're giving them a gift of, helping them achieve those goals, also surprising them by turning the tables, maybe subverting their expectations. Either way, what you're doing is communal creativity, and that's going to help you really get those creative juices going. Let's say that, for example, you're someone that enjoys writing, but it's been a sec, right? Life has happened. I totally get that. Sometimes getting into writing can be very hard. Getting into D&D, it's a little bit easier because you have people that you have to be accountable to, right? Which is also a tip for writing, find some people you can be accountable to, like a writing group or something, and they could help you out a whole lot. But that's one reason. The second, and this one, honestly, as I was thinking about this topic, I think this is one that a lot of DMs and players could just learn in general, even if they're not writers, but as writers especially, it's so important. You've probably heard show, don't tell, right? Many people hear about the principle of show, don't tell in an early English class, especially when they're in school. A teacher gets really tired of having to explain to them, hey, I don't want you to say that this person is sad. I want you to show me through your words that they're tearing up, that they're acting irrationally because of how either depressed or mournful they are, right? Show me the actions, because it gets so much more interesting rather than when people just explain the emotions that they think that the player or character in the story is feeling, right? And that's the same for if you are a DM or a player. As a DM, there's a lot of times when you're going to have, let's say it's a villain or a victim, either one, and you're going to be trying to evoke an emotion in the players. Getting players to want the same thing that you want or to feel the way that you want them to feel, that's a hard task, as anybody will tell you. It's hard for a reader as well, but especially a player. They come in with preconceived notions about what they want out of the story. And so when you're saying that, oh, there's this boy, he's walking down the street, he has a lame foot, and he's struggling, and oh, these guys are they're getting up in his face and they're pushing him down. That's going to have a lot bigger of a response than if some person comes up to them and is like, hey, I've got these friends or these people down my street who keep hurting me, and giving a whole exposition about like, oh, hey, this is my life, woe is me. That kind of sucks when it's compared to just having the players walk down the street and they notice the actions of some bullies beating up on this kid that they just noticed, right? And that could be you could do some kind of check so that they could see him, or however you want to do it. But that's a great example of how, as an author who wants to be a DM, if you practice showing instead of telling, then your players are going to feel like they're doing the natural thing when they step in, right? If instead of having everybody in town talk about the evil king and, oh, he's a bad king, if instead the evil king's son comes into town and starts, gathering people up to hang them in the town square, you can guess which one is actually going to get the players to feel like they want to take that guy down, right? So that's another huge thing that I would personally really recommend. If you're going to be a DM or an author, but especially as an author in the DM seat, practice that. Consciously ask yourself, hey, am I showing more than I'm telling? And then just take that same experience that you have and see what kind of things that you're showing, quote unquote, actually are getting a response. Because I'll tell you what, not everything will. And you can take that same knowledge about like, hey, these certain types of experiences and stimuli don't get much of a reaction, and you can apply that into your writing as well. But let's not stop there. Kind of going along with that, remember that your players' reactions are a gold mine of info for you. If they're bored, yeah, that could be, you could feel that's a failing. I personally wouldn't say that that's what you should feel. I would argue that if they're giving a bored reaction, instead, what you ought to do is be thankful, right? Because they're letting you know, they're telegraphing how they're feeling. And so pay attention, right? That's something that you don't get when it comes to reading, because you can't just stare at some reader's face hawk-eyed, as they're reading through your story. Doesn't work. But you can do that here with D&D. It's a kind of a magical experience. It's like the perfect test playground for all of your ideas. And then finally, I think one of the big benefits of a potential author being a DM is that you get to practice being a pantser, or a gardener is another way to say it. If anybody has heard any kind of writing advice, a lot of times they split the types of writers into two camps. The first one is planners, and the second one is pantsers, which of course that means like riding by the seat of their pants, right? I kind of like the other way to phrase it, which is architects and gardeners. Architects are people who frame the story and then they write. Gardeners or pantsers are people who it's like, hey, they write themselves into the story. Maybe they have a general idea, maybe they don't, but they just start writing and they kind of go with the flow of things. As a DM, you're going to see a lot of DMs who do a bit of both, right? There's some DMs that do just planning, and if players are like, hey, I want to do this, then they're going to just decentivize the heck out of that, right? They're going to be like, oh, you want to start a bakery? Oh gosh, the big baddie that I wanted you to attack just burned down your bakery. Oh, that's rough. Better go fight him. Whereas others are going to be like, oh, hey, I'm more of a gardener approach. Oh, I love that bakery. Yeah, let's do that. That's the interesting thing right now. Oh, there's a quest where all of your, friends and you have to go out and procure, wheat, which then you have to go to the haunted windmill to grind, or who knows what, right? Gosh, I think I just got something about ghosts on the mind, because I did a haunted chapel in the forest, and then I did a haunted windmill, which is, of course, not the first place you think of as being haunted, but more power to me. But regardless, I hope you understand what I'm saying. I hope that you understand that as a DM, what you want to strike is the opportunity to kind of broaden your horizons, right? And this is true for writers as well. I think some of the most successful writers, like Brandon Sanderson, you guys probably know about him. He's been a favorite of mine for a while. He's definitely a planner, but he's even said in his podcast, Writing Excuses, that he's been trying to have moments and create moments where he can do more of the gardener, pantser kind of writing, where he can kind of just feel out how the characters and the scene would evolve naturally, so to speak, right? And so that's something that you should definitely try as a DM, is just practice that. Practice broadening your horizons. If you're not a planner, plan some, right? And well, that's actually one of the real nice things about being a DM, is that you're kind of forced to plan. And it's actually harder in many ways to just kind of go by the seat of your pants, because you have to plan, encounters, you have to plan settings. And that's nice, but I think especially for writers who are a little too dependent on plans, they can look at the experience as a DM and be like, hey, this session, I'm going to accept 2 random ideas, and I'm going to try my hardest to make them as interesting as possible. So you can make a goal like that, or conversely, you could be like, hey, I've just been a player for a while, and I get scared of planning. I'm more of the flying by the seat of your pants type of person, and being a player gives me that. You could instead make the commitment and be like, hey, crew, For the next campaign, can I run it? It's going to be short or whatever. You can totally do that, and that's a valid thing to do. So I would say definitely, if you're an author, get into being a DM. Now, huge caveat, and kind of going back to that podcast writing excuses, they brought this up, and I've seen that some in my own life, where if you are a DM for D&D 5e, there is enough planning that needs to go into it that it might suck up all of your creative time, right? I don't mean that in a negative way. I mean, I'm not saying like, oh, you're so weak that you can't do both of these. Don't think that at all, right? Because I have an issue with it too. The human mind, I guess. A lot of us have a hard time going from one intensive planning or creative endeavor and jumping right into another one. And that's okay. So for like Brandon Sanderson, he even said, he was like, hey, when I started getting more seriously into writing, I had to stop DMing as much. And so he only did it once in a, blue moon. And that's fine. He also was like, hey, I still do it. I still am a player. And what I would say is I'd riff off of that. And I'd just say, hey, you can do it, but keep a couple things in mind. First off, you have to realize what kind of person you are. If you are the kind of person who does get exhausted after a D&D session, or you find that you're spending all your time planning, then you need to make a decision. One, you could time block, right? If you do really want to do them simultaneously. A lot of people, what they'll do is be like, hey, in my evenings, I'm going to do an hour every other day doing DMing preparation, right? And then on the other days, I'm going to do an hour of writing. Now, it's going to slow down both processes, but you can still get that in there so long as you time block and you're like, during 8 o'clock to 9 o'clock, this is all I'm doing. And if you're doing that and it's working, great. Love that for you. If it's not, what you can do is just kind of realize, what my parents sometimes said, there's a time and season for everything, right? You can be a DM if it's something you really want and it's really good for you. Like, absolutely be a DM. However, maybe after that campaign and you're like feeling guilty about not writing, if you're not getting in the writing that you want, you can say, hey, I still want to keep this going. I need one of you to take over as the DM. But anyway, thank you for listening to me. I hope that this wasn't too rough as a first try. Regardless, I hope that you enjoyed it. If you find yourself in the position of being a potential or prospective author who also is wanting to DM, then here's what you do. You make a plan, you call your friends, and you roll initiative.
Thank you for listening to today's show. We really appreciate your support and your patronage. We have a few more announcements to go over. First,
did you ever fall in love with the library as a kid? It was a place where you could experience 1,000 stories without having to buy 1,000 books. That is what Monsters.rent can do for your D&D campaign. You can rent and swap out as many quality miniature monsters and creatures for your D&D party as you could ever want, without having to buy them. You can rescue villagers from a kobold camp, or lead your party through the fighting forest, or many more adventures. We're coming out with new bundles all the time. Just sign up for our subscription to get access to your own personal library of minis. Go to monsters.rent to find out more. That's the website. Monsters, with an S, .rent. Get your library pass to a world of minis today.
we also wanted to let you know that today's episode is sponsored by Stardust and Dragons. I'm going to let one of the cast of Stardust and Dragons, Christian Hatcher, and his crew tell you a little bit more about it.
This August, a new adventure podcast is coming to a platform near you, filled with action.
Shoot one of the two of them. We can't keep taking hits like that.
Drama.
Everything that she's been doing, everything she's going to do, finally sets in.
And Stardust.
Help! Help! Someone, please!
Find out more about this epic odyssey at stardustanddragons.com, where adventure awaits in the stars.
that's all the announcements we have today. Again, thank you so much for everything you do for us. You make this show possible. Like we said before, we'll be back next week with another great episode, and until then, let's go ahead and roll initiative.